My name is Philip Tedeschi. I'm a professor at the Graduate School of Social Work at the University of Denver and the director of the Institute for Human-Animal Connection. The biggest focus of my work is really the intersection between the health of people, animals, and the environment. And my work continues to include information that would suggest that they're highly integrated. I'm particularly interested in this area of relationship, which would suggest, and I think increasingly, there's good evidence to support that people, in order to be healthy, have to have healthy relationships. And as it turns out, they don't have to be just human relationships, that our relationships with non-human animals are another form of social support. And in many cases, people's animals in their lives are some of the most reliable relationships they have. I think the critical questions that we should be asking ourselves is whether or not the evidence continues to really support this idea that in order for people to have optimum human health, that it requires the well-being of other animals and the environment. And so I think, this idea that we may be damaging our psychological and physical health by being human-centric, almost to the degree that we're careless not only about our relationship with other non-human animals, but also careless about our own futures. When we're seeing damage done to ourselves as a consequence of being cruel or callous or harming other living systems, I think that's a very important question for us to look at and provide real data. Because if it is, then I think it gives us reasons to respond to these issues, in a much more comprehensive way, to resource them properly and to take them seriously as research questions. The research question that I've been focused on most recently is how do, connections to others affect us neurobiologically? And at the heart of this particular question is this idea of bioaffiliative safety, or sometimes now attached to a concept related to what's called the polyvagal theory. Now, the polyvagal theory is really defining a concept that prior to even conscious thought, that the way human beings are designed would suggest that we're recognizing safety and well-being in other living things around us, even really before we have a conscious recognition of that, so that it informs our safety and well-being. So on a micro level, we might look at something as prominent or as prevalent as pet keeping. On more macro considerations, our relationship to things like our biodiversity, whether we treat the forests around us or other living systems around us, would suggest that those are not without consequence as well, that as we live in a community or live in a society that interacts with these systems carelessly, that those will influence how we in fact develop as human beings. And so I think for me, the question of how we interact with other non-human animals is not without significance. I had two people that were very influential early in my career. One was Dr. Jane Goodall. Dr. Goodall was doing some very interesting investigations into the concepts of cognition and the emotional lives of animals and asking important questions about how does the recognition of the fact that other animals are sentient, how does that influence our responsibility, especially our moral responsibility to other animals? So I'd say the second person in my career that was very influential was Dr. Aldo Leopold, who was often thought of as the grandfather of the conservation movement. And he wrote a well-known little book called the Sand County Almanac, where he defines a concept called the land ethic. That was one of the early definitions of the integration of what we now refer to sometimes as One Health or One Welfare. And speaking directly to the interconnectedness between people and the land, and really talking about the flora and fauna own significant connection with one another, but also its connection to human society. One of the ways I think about this is that without other animals, we start to live in a setting or in a society of real relational poverty. For me, the most important element of our everyday existence is the wonder of interacting with other living things and beings. So our forest and our ecological and biodiverse, planet is what makes it worth being part of it. And so for me, it is absolutely a dimension that I would describe as a critical part of our quality of life.